Hey everyone, RogueGold here, welcome back to the Division 2, and today we've got a topic that I'm quite excited to go over. And I'm quite excited for the implications that this upcoming change will have for the larger game. It's actually something that I was talking about years ago, I'm sure I was far from the only one, but it now looks like with Year 6 Season 1, the update that is coming to the game in just over 2 weeks from now, the developers are taking the first step into finally making this a reality. Now, I'm sure the suspense is killing you, you're like, what the hell is he talking about? I'm talking about the randomization of attribute rules on exotic armor. That's right. So I want to break down exactly what is coming in this regard, how I hope to see it expanded based on prior trends that we've seen, and discuss why I think this will be such a beneficial change for the game. Hopefully that all sounds good, we're going to jump right into it, and if you end up enjoying the video and you want to stay in the loop with everything Division 2, then be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already and make my day. But without further ado, let's go. Alright, now first thing I want to preface here, not that it matters tons, I had intended to make this video a little over a week ago at this point, but it was really just as I was sitting down to get it done is when we got the news drop about Heartland's cancellation, so obviously with that and all of the fallout that came with it, this got bumped back. But now we're talking about it, because like I said, it's a topic I care about, and it's a change I'm quite excited to see in the game if we're lucky enough to get to that point. This all started back when they ran the 220 PTS a few weeks back, that's why I mentioned me being a bit late to this. To some of you, this may be old news. But I did not realize this until the PTS had already concluded. I first discovered it from others discussing it on Reddit, that with the new upcoming exotic knee pads, the Acosta's knee pads, if you went and reconfigured them at the crafting station in the PTS, you were met with random attribute rolls each time you did so. Now it's important to note that the core attribute did not seem to be affected, so you can't change that, but assuming this was not a bug, which I only mentioned because I haven't seen the developers comment on it, so we can't be 100% certain until hearing otherwise, but assuming it's not, this is big. In case you're not fully following me here, every exotic gear item that we have in the game is 100% fixed. The actual stat rolls themselves, whether your Coyote's mask drops with 10% crit damage versus 12% for example, that will fluctuate on every exotic item you receive, but every Coyote's mask comes with crit damage and crit chance, and there's nothing you can do about that. What we've now seen with the Acosta's knee pads, however, is that the devs may be going down the path to fully implement complete stat randomization to all exotic armor. Now before we talk about why that's so exciting, let me lay out the kind of trend that we might be seeing here, because we've already seen this whole process play out with exotic weapons over the past year. It began with the Sacrum Imperium exotic marksman rifle back in Season 11. Prior to that item's introduction, every exotic weapon was 100% fixed. Specifically with their third attributes, every exotic weapon had a predetermined third attribute that you could not change, meaning on some, like the backfire for example, that came with magazine size, you were potentially leaving a lot of damage on the table by missing out on stats like damage to armor or damage to targets out of cover. This then changed in Season 11, like I mentioned, when they added the Sacrum Imperium. Every copy of that item came with a random third attribute. Now this was pretty exciting for people as it opened up more build opportunities, but for the time being that feature was kept exclusively to the Sacrum Imperium, and we saw that trend continue for the two following updates where every new exotic that was added, like the St. Elmo's, the Iron Lung, the Ouroboros, they all had this randomized third attribute feature, but all past exotics were still fixed. Finally though, this then changed with Year 5 Season 3 and Project Resolve back in February, where the devs went in and retroactively unlocked all exotic weapons in the game, so that whether you wanted to reconfigure old copies you already owned or go and farm new ones, every exotic weapon in the game now came with a random third attribute. And so, all of that is to say that I fully suspect we're seeing the same trend here. For now, they'll keep the randomized attribute things to just new exotic armor pieces, probably just to give it a little time, see how the reception is, how it'll play out, and then in 1 or 2 major updates from now, they're likely going to go in and retroactively apply that feature to every exotic gear item in the game. And assuming this does happen, as I've already said like 15 times now, I'm excited. And in my mind, this is a far bigger deal than the third attribute unlock that we got on exotic weapons. Mostly because with weapons, damage to targets out of cover is the most desired stat on practically any build. But with gear, this is where things could get interesting. Off the top of my head, some combinations that I would want to go for: Ridgeway's Pride with crit damage and armor regen to fully maximize the regen effect and to better pair with SMG usage to not overcap on crit chance. A Catharsis Mask with crit chance and crit damage, I certainly don't need the incoming repair on any of my PvP builds. A Coyote's Mask with hazard protection instead of crit chance, again not to overcap and to be able to better integrate that with hazard builds. I mean, the options are obviously vast, and that's not even considering some skill-based exotic items or various non-meta options across the board. What it really boils down to is the fact that the Division shines best when it can offer its players the maximum amount of gear customization and build options so that they can be as creative as possible in their theory crafting. and having exotic armor be completely fixed in this game has always subtracted from that total possible equation. So, for the options I listed and the countless more that players will come up with to integrate into their own builds, having more build options has virtually zero downside. The other reason why the potential for this change excites me is the incentive opportunity. I would say that it's no secret for any longtime player of the Division 2 that there is not much left to grind for in this game. And if you continue to play the Division 2 on any kind of a regular basis, then it's probably due to your enjoyment of the game and its gameplay more than any kind of long-term goals you may still have with loot. And that's fine to an extent, but as a looter shooter, I also think it's important for the game to always be striving to offer some kind of loot incentive for every player regardless of their regular playtime. And using the Division 1 as an example, exotics served as a really good outlet for that incentive. Their drop rates were low, meaning it was an accomplishment just to get one to begin with, but also their stats were completely randomized. The only given was its associated exclusive talent. And while that talent usually made the item worth using even if your rolls weren't exactly what you wanted, the fact that these items were randomized gave players a reason to continue grinding them even after acquiring the first copy. Whether that was to get a version with higher rolls, to get multiple copies with different rolls to slot into different builds, whatever it may have been. From the start, the Division 2's exotics had never been able to fill the same role because of their fixed natures. You get your Coyote's mask once, optimize it up, and bam, the only purpose future copies serve is to either donate to expertise or to scrap it for an exotic component. A Coyote's mask drop no longer excites me whatsoever. There is literally zero purpose it could serve, so I auto-deconstruct it. But if this change does go into effect, and if it's applied to every legacy exotic armor piece that we have, then that shifts things dramatically. Now I have a reason to at least briefly look at any exotic drop I get to see if it's desirable or a unique combination, and if I make a build where I'm using an exotic and I go, getting this one with this roll would fit in really well, now I have a farming goal in the game that can't just be solved by one 15-minute countdown run. Imagine that, something to grind for that at minimum will take longer than a 1 hour session of the Division 2. That genuinely excites me because as a veteran player, I haven't had anything like that to go for in literally years. A big reason why I like looter shooters is the loot chase, and this promises to restore that fantasy at least in one tiny way. Now I'm sure there's someone out there who will be upset at the idea of an established part of the game getting changed to add in some more randomization. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry. I think the fact that we've lived with these exotic gear items as they've been for years now should mean that you can continue using those exact ones that you have if you wish. But for those who want to synergize things a bit better with the builds that you have, there's now a path to that goal, and it's one that might involve a bit of grind, taking us back a little bit closer to some of those old glory days in my maybe slightly elitist point of view. Alright my friends, that is going to do it for me on this one. I wanted to share this somewhat big discovery and change that people had found on the PTS 4221 that I had originally missed, so my apologies there. But hopefully with this video and some of my explanations, you got a sense of why this change could have such big implications. And with that, I'd be very curious to hear your guys' thoughts on this whole matter. What's your perspective on the entire notion of retroactively adding in randomized attributes onto exotic armor, like we saw them do with exotic weapons? Is it an idea that excites you, as it does me, or maybe you have some reservations on it? Also, it is totally valid to ask, do you think it will even happen? Obviously, if they're adding it to the new Acosta's knee pads, then it can only be assumed that it will get more broadly rolled out over time, but maybe you've got a different take. As always, whatever you're thinking about anything we covered, I would love to read it all down below. And that's all I've got for you today, everybody. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. RogueGold. Out.